Well, we're checking back on that job that we started the other day. Last time we checked in on this job, we had trimmed off the old threads. I went ahead and vapor blasted the head, and I TIG welded new material on, and now we are trimming the OD to cut the new threads. So this process involves just cleaning up the TIG weld, a lot of interrupted cuts, a lot of vibration and chatter, and just some real nice, easy, gentle cuts to get through some of the bumps on the TIG weld until we get down to a nice OD. I cut a lot of metric threads on this machine. It took me if you're following along with the Harrison lathe sort of updates on this, which have been going on for like the last 2 years, this lathe, I picked it up at a machine shop up in Redwood City, and it had been owned by a couple of German brothers, and they really didn't use it very much. They just sat in a corner most of its life. And in fact, when I got it, the gearbox on the bottom was so gummed up with old oil that it wouldn't even shift anymore. And so I had to take it all apart and soak it in solvent and get all the old crud out of there, and then, you know, put it all back together again. And you can follow back by searching for the Harrison keyword on my post to see some of those updates. But anyway, this lathe, it took me a while to find it. I was really just looking for two different kinds of lathes that I was familiar with. One was the Sag 12 that old Joe Groger has, which I'm very familiar with because that's the lathe that I learned to cut threads on. And then I found this lathe, which is made in England, and it's cool because you can cut English, SAE, and also metric threads on it without changing any gears. And so that was the reason that I wanted one of these lathes, and when I found one, I knew I had to buy it, even though it was not in the greatest condition. So I went ahead and bought it, and at this point, I think we've rebuilt just about everything on this lathe, and it's working great. It's just a pleasure to use it. So anyway, I'm going to keep going at this. The face of the exhaust thread, and I'm going to chamfer this also, so it has a nice look and it's easy for the threads to start. Thread cutting tool loaded up, and that is a brazed on carbide. And now what I'm just doing is I'm making sure I have the lathe set correctly. These are supposed to be 2mm threads, and that looks correct. So the next step is to simply move through the threading process here. And a lot of times with harder metals, you might want to come in at an angle and cut these threads, but I just come straight in. The aluminum is not that hard and does not present much of a challenge to the cutting tool. You notice that I had to trim the cutting tool to get past the casting there. It's really a tight fit in there. So I made a couple of different tools. One is this brazed on tool, and then the other one is this high-speed steel tool. It just, you know, a little bit of trial and error to get something in there that will fit. And the brazed on carbide tool seems to just last a lot longer between sharpenings. So let's try another test cut here. Let's see here. It's kind of hard to do this with one hand. Come in 2 thou on this one. And I'm just going to move this by hand. Until I have total confidence that my clearance is good on these, I usually just roll through these by hand. Sorry about my phone not focusing. I don't have any good way to fix that. I need to get set up on a tripod here so I can take some videos. I have had a lot of requests for people that wanted to see videos of my machining work, which I'm happy to do. I really enjoy doing this machining work. So there's my rough thread spacing right now, and that looks really good. I'm going to go ahead and make a first cut here, maybe 5 or 10 thou, and see what it looks like. Cutting thread, I'm maybe cutting about 5 thou on each pass. I'm just checking my thread depth here with my thread mic, and I've got a bit more to go. Make sure I get it in the groove. Get it in the groove. So I'm going to take a few more passes, at least 2 more passes. I'll check it again. I'm happy with the finish. And the thread is looking good. Okay, I took off 10 thou since we last checked it, and we are within range now of the finishing die. And so the next step is to run a die over it. The die is really, I think, the finishing touch to make the thread be as beautiful as possible. These are not cheap dies by any stretch. They're really expensive, but they're really a necessary part of making these things look good. Now I'm going to see if I can get this to work with just one hand. May not be able to do this. Let me try. Normally I spin the chuck, but I can't seem to do that. I'm going to try just turning the die. Normally I can lock the die, put it in my tailstock holder, and just spin it right on there. And I think a little bit of lubricant would be good. A little WD-40 in there. Couldn't hurt. Sorry about the shaky camera. I do promise that I will look into getting a some sort of a shop camera here. Bacon, you were supposed to help me with that. This is an adjustable die, so after I've run this die over this, I'm going to try my test exhaust nut and see what kind of fit I get. Okay, so the thread die has been run over that, and that is the final product. And we run a test fit. Nice thread. No wiggle, no wobble. And we can take this off now and proceed with the rest of the items that we've got to do on this head. I think I'm going to be replacing some guides, and then we'll be doing a valve seat lap, and I'll show you guys how we do that.